Hohenzollerns. You have read about two of the Hohenzollerns, but you've forgotten them. You read about Frederick William and Frederick. And so, I know you don't remember who they are. So I'm glad we're having this lecture. And then you're going to read about two other of the Hohenzollerns over this weekend. And so let us talk about the Hohenzollerns today. Dates of reign. Prussia from 1701 to 1918. And Romania from 1866 to 1930. So randomly Romania gets in there. And then you get that late 19th century, early 20th. But Prussia, remind me what this Prussia thing is. A state within the Holy Roman Empire. And then in the 1900s is also kind of an area within Germany. Germany was formed in 1871. So they kind of are kingly within this territory. After 1918, when World War I takes over, they're going to kind of get ousted. But right away, what is their ambition? Look at this map. It's obvious. This is Prussia. To unite. To unite what?
What are these people called? What's their name?
Prussia and Western Prussia. But while they're at it, they might as well unite what?
The whole...
All of Germany at least, and maybe even parts of Europe. So they're going to be the ones that want to unite things. This is their family crest. Two semi-naked little Germans standing around. What do semi-naked Germans do when they're standing around? All right. Let me introduce you to Frederick William the Great Elector. He is the first guy that you did read about and you forgot. That's okay. That's why we're doing this lecture. First of all, what's an elector?
Someone who elects the Pope.
Elects the emperor. Look how much you learned. Look at here. Here's an ancient medieval picture of the electors. This guy is only a duke. He's duke from 1640 to 1688. He's duke for 48 years. He is a Hohenzollern. His name is Frederick William, and he is a Prussian. This is his little territory. Prussia at this point is now one of these states that is much more independent after the year 1648. What happened in 1648? The 30 Years' War. As a German in northern Germany, what do you think their religion is, these Prussians? Protestant, absolutely. The farther south you are, the more likely you are to be Catholic. This guy's name is Frederick William in English. You want to laugh some more of his German name? Yeah. Well, how do you say Frederick in German? Friedrich. Why is it funny to you? Say Friedrich. Say this. Say shh. But now say this. It's more like Dutch. Friedrich. And then his other name, of course, would be Wilhelm. Wilhelm. So, of course, his name is actually Friedrich Wilhelm, but we can call him Frederick William. He is he's the Duke of Prussia. Okay, that's what Prussia is. It's a state, and he's the Duke. In other words, he's like second to king. But he's also the elector of Brandenburg. So there are these different sections in Germany. One of them is called Saxony. You know there are electors in Saxony. There's an electorship in Brandenburg. He is also that. Now, at this point, after 1648, the 30 Years' War is over, there are actually now 8 electors, not 7. That's one of the things that happened with that treaty. What treaty ended the 30 Years' War? Peace of Westphalia. But it's not called Westphalia. In German, it's called... Now, keep in mind that Prussia and Brandenburg don't touch each other. So he's the elector of one thing and the duke of another, but they're not connected. People love to connect that. He is clearly a Calvinist as a northern German. He could have been a Lutheran. That would have been a good guess. But because he's a Calvinist, he's kind of an even more intense type of Protestant. He marries into the House of Orange. Where is the House of Orange?